Greetings. Patch 7.36 is upon us, and with it comes one of the most massive shifts in meta we have ever seen. The new innate passive and facet system has brought a much needed breath of fresh air to Dota. I have decided to create a tier list for offlane heroes. Here is my approach for determining the best picks for each category. I used two different sources for my data. One is based on pro games from the website Dota 2 Pro Tracker, and the other is based on the common picks in pub games, based on every rank from Herald to low immortal. I will also be explaining what each tier means and how you should approach picking heroes in that tier. Disclaimer: this tier list is based on the latest patch 7.36a, so if you're viewing this video at a later date, be aware that it might not be so up to date. So now, let's begin. F tier. This category are not good at all. You'll want to avoid picking any of them in the majority of situations. Some of them might still be goodish if you're comfortable with them, or they're a great counter to the majority of their heroes, but you should just avoid them entirely. The first is Bristleback. Unfortunately, his two facets are not good, and in some cases it just makes him bad in general. Pair that with the fact that there are stronger offlaners around, and that Legion Commander is going to be in every game, he has definitely fallen from grace. Next, we have Pangolier. This guy has been getting nerfed for so long that he's currently standing on a 36% win rate in regular pub matches and a 39% win rate in pro matches. Just avoid him entirely. His only strength is that he's a good laner and he provides good disruption in fights, but other than that, he's just bad. Then we have Lycan. His facets unfortunately do not address his weaknesses that made him subpar in previous patches. Sure, his new Spirit Wolves make him super tanky early on, but Lycan was never supposed to be a tank in the first place. Also, his innate passive is really trash. 2% more damage to neutral creeps per level? Why? His whole concept was that he would farm a Helm of Overlord quickly, and then destroy towers, and also kill supports in 2 or 3 hits, using his army of wolves and creeps. Compared to the other offlaners this patch, he has nothing to offer. There are better split pushers, there are better assassins, and there are better tanks. Lastly, we have Ogre. He was never really a good offlaner anyway, and his facets don't change that so much. His main issue is that he's kind of a greedy offlaner that needs a good support and items to be enabled, which does not work well when you need to harass the enemy safe laner 24/7. E tier. Heroes in the E tier may not be as powerful as those in higher tiers, but they still have their strengths. If you're comfortable with them or believe they can be effective in certain matchups, they're still a viable choice. However, beyond their specific niches, there aren't many compelling reasons to pick them. First, we have Death Prophet. Now, this is going to break my heart, but I'm going to be honest. She's not the beast she used to be. The main issue with her is that the patch didn't give her anything groundbreaking. Her innate passive gives her an edge in chases and helps connect the Spirit Siphon, and the cooldown reduction is decent for Spirit Siphon charges and Exorcism, but compared to what others have received, this is just meh. Her Exorcism facet requires people to die, and it goes away with each use, so this facet is kinda useless if the game is uneventful. Still, the damage is worth it if it pops, especially at the level 6 power spike. Her other facet is the slow on silence, but remember that she wants to go 2-0-3 in most matchups. Overall, the facet and passives are just placeholders for now, and she's not that good because of that. But I will still pick her. Next, we have Lone Druid. Since his bear was moved to an innate ability, it was also nerfed. Not only does it attack slower right now, but it is also easier to kill. And from his two facets, he only ever picks one. He's much better as a mid laner or safe laner since he can get some XP or get some more farm, but in a position that requires you to be a constant menace to the enemy, he could be better. What is there to say about him? They removed the damage from his skewer and moved it to a facet. and his innate is honestly rather shit. Only the skewer one is good from his facets, and the reverse polarity is just for griefing your team. He's still good if you're a Mega Magnus player. Nothing beats a good Magnus relocating your whole team and hitting a 5-man RP. And then we get to Beastmaster. This hero has not been good for some while. Zoo heroes have been somewhat mediocre in the last patch, and his innate is just his previous passive, but now you have it at level 1, which is irrelevant since he's only 5 attack speeds. Maybe it will help you get some extra CS early on, but I don't know. Also, it doesn't give you your teammates the attack speed anymore, so that's less utility. These facets actually give you a choice between having more pushing capabilities and more takedown ability, so that's pleasant. But the patch didn't address what made him weak in the previous iterations. But now we get to the D tier. Heroes in this tier are still not that strong, but they're at a higher tier than E because of their great utility and reliability. Some of them are still matchup dependent though. Overall, they can be strong in the right hand and in. Let's start off with Conca. Now, if any of you have watched the ESL 1 Birmingham tournament, you know how popular this hero is with pro players. He has a great chase and catch combo with X marks the spot and torrent, and a big stun and damage delay with his ghost ship. But the biggest star of his kit is, in my opinion, the Aghanim Scepter, which makes it a nightmare to play against him without BKB. But unfortunately his numbers got nerfed in 7.36, and also he's not that good against teams that have built-in debuff immunity. Think Juggernaut and Lifestealer. And we are starting to see a lot of those heroes in this meta. Also, if he has a bad early game, he becomes a burden on his team. His facets are underwhelming too, but he is still somewhat decent if he has a good match. Next, we get to Mars. I would say that his low performance is because his innate passive is just gimmicky. You get 25% more HP regen per enemy, which outnumbers you. I guess this pops up when you have a heart and are 1v5ing, and it can come to clutch in some situations, but it's obvious that his passive is just a placeholder or needs more tweaking. His arena facet is cool though. Removing all vision inside the arena can prevent many saving abilities that have become common over the years. Spirit Breaker. Now this guy is powerful in this patch. His innate passive is just a big XP boost to the player that has the lowest level in your team, which is fantastic. This is why XP talents were removed in the first place, and his new facet deals so much damage. You get about 3 seconds of the charge movement speed when it ends, and you can use it to get in, stun some people, and get out, or use your ulti for more damage, or if you're just lucky, get a bash straight out of your charge which hits for even more damage. Not only that, he also received a massive buff. His charge is now debuff piercing by default. You might be asking, why isn't he on a higher tier then? He sounds fantastic. Unfortunately, what keeps him back is the mechanics of the offlane. Spirit Breaker likes to gank. He wants to charge other lanes and roam. One of the most essential tools for an offlaner is the ability to harass and endanger the enemy carry somehow. Unfortunately, his kit does not offer that. His early laning sucks, he has a sluggish attack speed and attack animation, and he needs other people to get kills early on. He can work if paired with an aggressive position 4, but overall he's just too risky. Timbersaw. Once again, he suffers from the same weaknesses as others in this tier, mediocre facets and innate passive. They also made him a strength hero, which sucks cause he loses on that early CSing power. He's still very good against strength lineups though. Doom. This guy was one of the kings of the last patch. His innate passive is very simple. You deal more damage to enemies that are lower level than you. One of his facets lets you buy more junk early on without being punished for selling them, but buyback is more expensive. The other one gives one charge to your Devourer and makes the creep abilities more powerful. Other than that, they nerfed his numbers, and so his Devourer doesn't provide armor anymore. which sucks because you can harass the hell out of this guy, so his laning is much weaker. But he still serves his role in the game, removing a hero from a team fight for 16 seconds. Then we have Viper. Remember when I told you about having tools to harass and endanger the enemy? Well, Viper has that. He walks into the lane, spits at you, and you can't do nothing. He got corrosive skin as an innate passive. Having 5% magic resistance at level 1 is good, I guess. And his poison attack facet makes him more cancerous than before. But when the laning stage is over, he is cooked. He's very slow and somewhat item dependent. Like many others in this tier, he serves his niche, which is the break on his ultimate. Break sources are pretty rare these days, and Silver Edge just does not cut it, so he can comfortably fill that role. And finally we have Omni Knight. He's just a personification of a holy/protection paladin. He's tanky as hell and deals a shit ton of damage. He also provides a lot of utility, but he's not the beast that he used to be. They nerfed his Hammer of Justice, now it has a lower range and doesn't proc with the shard. A significant weakness of his is silence. An Orchid or 1 or 2 silence spells on the enemy team just shuts him down. C tier. Heroes in this category are average. They have tools and stats that pushes them above the D tier, but they still have gaps in their kit that prevents them from being on a higher tier. But if you know when to pick and how to play them, they will not let you down. Let's start with Chaos Knight. I used this bad boy to climb from Legend to Ancient, but after the New Frontiers update, he kind of fell off. I would put him in a C/D tier list, but I just decided to put him in C tier because he still performs really well below High Immortal. But if I had to describe him in a single word, it's clunky. He has a strong laning phase and Manta on him is really good right now. Dawnbreaker. Now, her innate passive was one of the few who made a lot of noise before the patch dropped, and it does not disappoint. Complete vision of the map at sunrise is crazy strong. You can use this vision to gank, check the enemy positions, and it has many more uses. Her facets are also good. The hammer one is better suited for a support Dawnbreaker, but the other one is nice. Also, she received a quality life change and a buff on the patch, which really pushed her win rates up. Tiny. I'm not sure why, but every time the TI season rolls around, Ice Frog decides to buff this guy. His insurmountable passive turns him into an unstoppable force as the game progresses, which pairs up nicely with his passive, which is just a flat out damage reduction if you attempt to hit him. Overall, he's just a tanky damage machine. Razor. One of the few heroes in the game that can claim the title of anti-carry. He received the movement speed boosting passive, which increases his speed by 1% per level. It gives you a Yasha worth of movement speed at level 16. He suffers from the mediocre facet syndrome. I'm sure they will change his facets in later patches, but he does his job, connecting to the enemy carry and zapping them to death. Tidehunter. Again, he received mediocre facets and his passive only becomes worth it at higher levels. 500 damage is just too much at the beginning of the game. But he has Ravage, one of the best spells in the game, so that brings him up to the C tier. Undying. He indeed became Undying with his new passive. Unfortunately, you have to wait 8 minutes for it to come online, and it has an 8-minute cooldown. He is a good lane bully and his tombstone is a nightmare to deal with if placed correctly, but I suggest you play him as a support. Finally, we have Earthshaker. He received 2 significant buffs in this patch. First, his Aftershock is given to him at level 1, opening opportunities for alternative skill builds. Secondly, he can now play football with his enemies. But seriously, His totem facet allows him to farm creep waves and jungle camps quicker. He deals a ton of damage, and playing him from position 3 will enable him to farm blink quicker. And now we get to the B tier. Heroes in this tier have the tools and stats that give them an edge over lower tiers. Some have received significant improvements, while the others have received quality of life changes. Overall, they can deal with the new meta effectively. They usually give you a good result, unless they're horribly counterpicked. Let's begin with Underlord. He is the classic aura carrier. He has an excellent laning phase, wave clear, damage reduction, and bonus damage. He gets his passive at level 1 now, so that gives him an edge in the early last hitting contest. He has a cleave facet, but the better one is the minion one, which brings back the Necrobook summons when he uses his teleport. Overall, he's reliable. And we have Wraith King. I have just one thing to say about Wraith King, and that's that he's just a better Chaos Knight. And that's it. Next is Necrophos. Now, the previous patch he was just shit, but right now he's actually decent. Why, you might be asking? Well, they moved the regeneration component of the Heartstopper aura to an innate passive. This means that he just doesn't need to skill the Heartstopper aura at all in the laning phase. You see, the Heartstopper aura doesn't deal any significant damage at the beginning of the game, and you just had to skill it because it gave you the regeneration. But right now, you can just get 2 points in Death Pulse, 1 point in Eternal Shroud, and just skip that entirely, because you already have the regen. Other than that, his facets are just really meh. He has one that makes him a better chaser, but other than that, he's just B tier. Now, Dragon Knight is one of those heroes that actually received some interesting changes. He has 3 distinct facets now. One is the Fire Dragon, which is just a farming one, the Corrosive Dragon, which gives him dot and anti-armor, and the Frost Dragon, which is anti-heal / slow. But other than that, he's just really simple. Now for Weaver. This guy received a significant change in 7.36. They moved his Germany into an innate passive. This gives him an edge in the first 2 creep waves. He also deals a ton of damage and is super slippery. He's good against carries that want to snowball off early kills, maybe Ursa and Juggernaut, because he's just a slippery bastard, you can't kill him. Now let's talk about Visage. This guy was decent in the previous patch, but he's even better now. Just ignore his Faithful Follower facet because that's just training wheels. His better facet is the AoE Grave Chill. The only downside is that he's somewhat difficult to play. They also fixed one of his major weaknesses. Previously, Visage had a difficult time moving around the map, since his familiars wouldn't be able to get to him quickly if he teleported to another lane. But now, he can just recall them, which makes him even better than before. But he still has a weakness in the fact that before level 6, he's just meh. Now we get to Primal Beast. This guy is your classic offlaner. Tanky, big damage, and good crowd control. Not much to say about him. Sand King. They actually made his laning phase good. He deals a ton of damage, and one of his facets makes his Sandstorm actually good. And finally, there's Windranger. She's fast, makes her team go fast, and has all the right tools for being a good offlaner. And now, for the A tier. Heroes in this category are just good. They have the right tools, the right stats, and the right numbers to be consistently good performing in each game. The only thing that keeps them from being S tier is the fact that they're not OP. Let's start with Centaur. He's fast, he has a reliable stun, and his Aghanim makes someone invulnerable. That's enough reasons to put him in A tier. Pudge. Even though I hate this guy, I must give it to him. He's good in this patch. He just deals so much damage. If you don't have any anti-heal on your team, he becomes straight up unkillable. Slaughter. He deals a ton of damage, and his facets either make him tanky or unstoppable. Also, he gets his water bonuses at level 1 now, which is very nice since you would usually get your sprint at level 4 before. Now, we get to my beautiful Night Stalker. This patch blessed this guy. The facets he received are both excellent. His Void facet removes the sheer vision of your target, which turns Dota into a horror game. Also, it deals some dot damage for even more kill potential. Previously, one of Night Stalker's weaknesses was the first 5 minutes of the game, as an oppressive matchup would ruin his early game entirely. But now, that doesn't matter. Are you matched against a Ursa and Shadow Shaman? Just use the Night Rain facet to flip the day-night cycle and have your tools ready from the beginning. His innate facet is not that exciting though, it just reinforces your day/night play style. Then we have Brewmaster. He's not that changed from his previous iteration, he just has some more gimmicky abilities. He's just as strong as before. Darkseer. This guy received one of the more interesting passives of this patch. You see, his intelligence cannot be lower than his other stats now, which means you can just pile on strength and agility and get free intelligence with them. He even has a facet that gives him attack speed per intelligence, so you can turn him into an attacker. Other than that, he does what Darkseer does, being a teamfight powerhouse. Now we have Abaddon. He received some interesting changes. First, he respawns 10% faster, which is nice. He lost the silence on his third spell in return for a more reliable slow. He also has a facet that removes the burst on his shield, but makes it absorb more and return the damage. Overall, he is still a good offlaner and a chasing machine. Finally, there's Vengeful Spirit. A couple of patches back, she was a decent offlaner with a change to his axe. Now, she's back. This girl has one of the most unique characteristics in the game, being a ranged hero that benefits from melee items. Items like Echo Saber and Basher are balanced around the fact that they're better on melee heroes or only work on melee heroes. Vengeful Spirit throws this out of the gate. She can benefit from all the melee specific items like Echo Saber, Basher, and Battle Fury while being ranged. Also, she deals a ton of damage in the lane. Right now, she's just super scary. Lastly, we get to the S tier. Heroes in this category are currently the best choices in the game. They consistently win their games and in some cases are just overpowered. Now, let's begin with Winter Wyvern. She received some nice quality of life changes in the patch and is currently sitting as a whopping 58% win rate on Dota 2 Pro Tracker. She deals a ton of damage, has good harass, has farming capabilities, and can solo kill the enemy safely with the changes to his Winter Curse. Ads. Both of his facets are nice, and with the bonus armor being moved from his ultimate to his innate passive, he straight up becomes unkillable by physical damage in the late game. Legion Commander. Now, at the beginning of the patch, she was busted. She could receive up to 10k of all damage berry when she used her Q near illusions, which made her invulnerable for 8 seconds. But even after toning that down, she's still good, especially against Bristleback. Finally, there is Enigma. He gives his teammate 15% damage reduction by just standing near him, which is crazy good. Remember, Pipe only gives 10% magic resistance, and that's an expensive item. Other than that, he has Black Hole, which is in my opinion the best spell in the game. And here's the final tier list. Now, the rankings will definitely change as more strategies are discovered by the pros. Let me know what you think of it. Do you agree with the placements, or you would change them? As always, if you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe. But for now, goodbye.